Okay, my friends, no further ado, we go to Parshas Emor. If we do have time, by the way, I also have a story about Lag BaOmer, so I'll share that at the end if there's time. So Parshas Emor starts off with the command that is specific to the Kohanim, as the pasuk says. I sent it out earlier. Vayomer Hashem el Moshe. Hashem said to Moshe, Emor el HaKohen and b'nei Aaron, speak to the Kohen and the sons of Aaron, v'amarta aleim, and say to them, the nefesh lo yitama ba'amov, that they may not defile themselves to a dead body. And it goes on to specify that a Kohen may only go to the funeral of a close relative, father, mother, son, daughter, God forbid, brother, sister, or wife. And a Kohen Gadol cannot go to any of those funerals. The only exception for a Kohen Gadol is if there is a mace mitzvah. That means somebody who needs to be buried and nobody is taking care of that body. He can make himself tameh. He can become ritually impure in the context of assisting in that situation. What about a female kohen, a kohenes? Is she allowed to go to funerals?
Yes.
Yes is correct. Emor el kohenim b'nei Aaron. Speak to the kohenim, the sons of Aaron, not the daughters of Aaron. This is only one of three negative commands that do not apply to women. You know, there's 365 negative commandments in the Torah, 248 positive. Of the 248 positive, there are many that do not apply to women, all the time-bound positive mitzvahs, with some exceptions like Kiddush and Shabbos or whatever. But of the negative 365 mitzvahs, there are only three that do not apply to women. This is one of them, that a female kohen may go to funerals. And of course, not just may, but in the case of close relatives, it's a mitzvah. And what are the other two? Who knows?
Can't be a zona.
One more time, I can't hear you.
Can't be a zona.
No, I'm talking about mitzvahs that do not apply to a woman.
Rounding the corners of the head.
Rounding the corners of the head, exactly. A woman does not have to keep her payot. She doesn't have to have any side locks. One more. It's a related mitzvah, by the way.
Not shaving the
Exactly, not shaving the beard. Women don't usually grow beards, but in case they do, have no fear, they're allowed to shave them off. So, the concept behind it, by the way, as far as why the mitzvah of not becoming tummy to the dead does not apply to female kohanim is very simple, because the idea of a kohen not becoming tummy has to do with their availability to serve in the Beis HaMikdash. The kohanim were supposed to be available to serve in the Beis HaMikdash at all times. In the time of the Beis HaMikdash, of course they have to be available. But even nowadays, Mashiach could come any day. The Beis HaMikdash could come down ready-made from heaven. The clouds of the heaven can swoop us up from South Florida and deposit us in Yerushalayim. And we need to have kohanim ready to serve. So what's a kohen going to say? I'm sorry, I just went to a funeral. That's not right. So he has to not become tameh. That's the concept behind it. Now, female kohanim, or kohanis, if you will, are not eligible to serve in the Beis Hamikdash, and therefore the laws of becoming Tamid do not apply to them. Okay, that was just a little tangent. But
Not even as bookkeepers, or or
they can do the same thing that a Yisraelis can do. A Yisraelis can also be a bookkeeper,
yeah.
but you don't have to be tahar to be a bookkeeper.
Yeah. Well, the shkalim, you're dealing with stuff that's the behemoths and the shkalim, and I would
don't
think you
know.
have to constantly be careful.
I don't know. They could have their office off-site, and they could keep their books. I don't know if a coin is eligible to become tamei, by the way. I don't think it has that din of a keli. And a live animal also cannot become tamei, just for your information.
Right.
But anyway, this is
Thank you.
all a side point to the discussion I wanted to have, which is that Rashi focuses on the words Emor el ha-koyanim, speak to the koyanim. And he says, Emor ve'amarta, speak and speak. Apparently, there's an extra word in this pasuk. Imagine if the pasuk would just say, Vayomer Hashem el Moshe, Hashem said to Moshe, Emor la-koyanim b'nei Aaron, speak to the koyanim, the sons of Aaron, lenefesh lo yitama ba'amav, they shall not become tamei to the dead. That would have been just fine. But instead, it says, Emor la-koyanim, speak to them, v'amart aleim, and speak to them. It seems like a superfluous couple of words. We know that nothing is superfluous in the Torah. Everything has a reason and has a meaning. So Rashi says, Emor ve'amarta, the double word is lahazhir gedolim al haktanim. Lahazhir means to warn. That the gedolim should warn the ktanim. The gedolim, the adults, should make sure that the kohanim, the young kohanim, should also not become tamei. It's not enough that they cannot become tamei. They have to make sure that the young kohanim also cannot become tamei. I don't know why that whiteboard is going up on the screen here. But anyway, that is part of their job as adults to train the youngsters. So practically speaking, if you are a Kohen, any Kohenim here? Looks like Ezra is a Levi. Oh, Mordechai is a Kohen. Very good.
I'm a Bechor.
Okay. I'm a Levi too, but not a Bechor. So the point is,
but not a Levi.
okay. Very good.
I'm a Levi and a Bechor.
Oh, excellent. So a Kohen cannot go into a place of Tumah, nor can he send his child into a place of Tumah. Not even a baby, a 1-day-old baby Kohen, cannot be brought into a cemetery, even if the person carrying him is not a Kohen. Emor v'amarta, speak and speak, means that the adults have to pass it on to the children. As a side point, this is also a side point, and it wasn't the main point of this class, is that the wording is a little bit unusual. Lahazhir, to warn, that the adults should warn the children. It doesn't say that they should teach, that they should educate, but rather lahazhir, warn. It's a bit of an unusual wording. And the Lubavitcher Rebbe explains that the word lahazhir is related to the word zohar, which means ray or shine. And what it means is lahazhir gedolim alaktanim. The adults will shine through the children. Sometimes a person thinks, I don't have time to waste with the little kids, teaching them, showing them. I'm so busy. I got my head in the clouds. I'm studying the Talmud. I'm studying the deep mystical aspects of Hasidus. I'm busy with me and my colleagues. I don't have time for the kids. And that could include kids who are physically young or people who are spiritually kids and need education. And a person might think it's beneath me. I'll leave that for others who are less qualified than myself, and they can teach the kids. I'm too busy with my important stuff. And in fact, when a person teaches others, the Gemara says, Meir Einei Shnehem Hashem. Excuse me, Hashem brightens the eyes of both of them. When a person takes the time to explain things to somebody who needs that explanation, whether a younger person in age or in level of knowledge, because they are imparting their knowledge to others, Hashem assists them in their own quest for knowledge. And Hashem brightens their eyes. And that's the meaning of lahazhir gedolim alaktanim. The adults will shine when they teach and impart to the next generation. Okay, but I'm getting sidetracked again. Bruce Fried and Jeff Huban are not on now, but are also Kohanim. So Bruce I know, but I don't know who Jeff is. Does he come to this class or maybe a different class? Or maybe he comes, but it doesn't say his name on his whatever. So I don't know who he is. But anyway.
He comes in the morning to the Gemara class.
Oh, okay, good. Who gives the Gemara class, by the way?
Rabbi Smith.
Yes.
Ah, nice. What is he teaching?
Sukkah.
Teaching Sukkah.
Nice. Okay, that's great. Okay, so here is the question, my friends. Every word of Rashi being precise. And Rashi is explaining the word, the extra word, ve'amarta, or ve'amarta aleihim. So really the divrei hamaskil of Rashi should be ve'amarta aleihim, or maybe Emor ve'amarta, or maybe Emor ve'amarta aleihim. That's really the words Rashi is focusing on. Emor el hakoyanim, speak to the koyanim. Well, Rashi's not explaining the words el hakoyanim. Why does he put that into his divrei hamaskil, into the words that he's quoting from the verse? Now, if you're very astute, you might answer, well, maybe that is not a quote from the pasuk that he's going to explain. Maybe that is simply the heading of the parsha heading, in case you want to know where the new parsha starts. Because Rashi, when he wrote his explanation, I assume that he did not have the prophecy, the prophetic power, to know that his explanation is going to be printed in the Chumash, and that in the Chumash itself, you'll see where one parsha ends, one parsha begins, and there's Rashi right underneath it. As far as he knew, it might be printed as a separate book entirely. It might not ever make it on the same page as the Chumash. You know, there's only like, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 commentaries that make it to the page of the Chumash. And that's, you know, with 2,000 years of commentaries or more, only 8 people made it to the page. So Rashi didn't know that. So he just wrote and quoted the beginning of the parsha to know where you're up to. But in order to properly address that, I'm going to grab a Chumash and we're going to look at some parshias and see if Rashi always quotes the first words of the parsha or not. Just one moment, please. All right, I got my trusty little chitas here, which is a Chumash and a Tehillim and a Tanya. So it has the 5 books of Moshe. And the
you
parsha
want
of
to see
Bereshit.
if Rashi always quotes the first words of every parsha that he's going. No, I don't think, unless he has something to say
Well,
about
let's
him.
see. Let's see. Bereshit definitely he does.
Yeah, well, okay.
Noach, as Ayla told us, Noach, there we have it. Lech Lecha starts with Lech Lecha. Indeed, this is going to take us some time if we go through 54 parshias. So let's see.
Go into Vayikra. Just go into where we are.
Well, Vayera, let me just go through the beginning few. Vayera definitely
Beginning today.
starts with Vayera.
I always look to see near where we are, right?
Vayera Elav, Vayiu Chayesara. Ve'ela told us Yitzchok. Okay, so Till told us yes. Let's start from Vayikra and see how it goes over there. Vayikra El Moshe
Well, Vayikra, you have the Aleph.
is starting with Vayikra El Moshe. Tzav starts with Tzavas Aaron. There you have it. Shmini starts with, what do you know? Vahi Bayem Shmini. Tazria starts with Isha Ki Tazria. All right, this is proving to be not so simple. Metzoira starts with Zois Tia Toiras HaMetzoira. Achrei Mois V'im Hashem Moshe Achrei Mois Shnei B'nei Aaron.
Yeah. Kedoshim, of
Here
course.
is the key, my friends. Kedoshim does not start with Kedoshim to you. Kedoshim starts with El Kol Adas B'nei Yisrael. That's it.
Huh. And Rashi doesn't address later anything to do with Kedoshim to you?
No, he explains the words Kedoshim to you. He has a different Rashi. He has a different Rashi that starts with Kedoshim to you, which he explains. But he doesn't put that in the beginning of the Parsha. You understand? So he's just quoting it to explaining. He doesn't put it in the beginning like a heading, like a Parsha heading. The point is he has no Parsha heading. So that means that even the other Parshias where he does quote the words of the beginning of the Parsha, it's not a Parsha heading, it's just to explain those words. So we're back to the question, why does Rashi not say Emor the Amarta instead of Emor ala Koyana? So in order to understand this, the Rebbe explains that there is another explanation that one might think is the correct one in the verse, which has a basis in a verse at the end of this discussion. After the discussion about the Kohanim becoming Tameh or not becoming Tameh, we have a section about who they can marry. And then we have a section about their blemishes, because a Kohen who has certain blemishes may not serve in the Beis HaMikdash. And after that, before we go on to the rest of the parsha that discusses the laws of Yom Tov and so on, or also actually the laws of the blemishes of animals, after that, the pasuk says, "Vaydaber Moshe el Aaron ve'el Bonav ve'el Kol b'nei Yisrael." Verse 24, the very end of the chapter. Moshe spoke to Aaron and his sons and all of the Jewish people. Now, what is he telling the Jewish people? All the previous verses, both about the Kohen becoming Tameh, about who they can marry, about their blemishes, are not really relevant to the Jewish people. So Rashi explains, where is the Rashi? Rashi explains. Where is the Rashi? I thought it was verse 24. I'm not seeing it in verse 24. Oh, here it is. Yeah, verse 24. Sorry, I was looking at the wrong chapter. Rashi explains, Vel kol b'nei Yisrael lahazir beis din ala koyanim, that the beis din should warn the koyanim. A kohen doesn't have the option to choose to be a kohen or not. A kohen is an older single. Maybe he was never married. Maybe he was married, divorced. Maybe he was married and widowed. And he's having trouble finding a shidduch. And the only shidduch he can find is a divorcee. And he wants to opt out. He wants to give up his kahuna. I'm putting that in quotation marks. I'll give up my kahuna and I'll marry the divorcee. It's okay. I'll give it up. I know it's a great honor to be a Kohen. It's been great giving you all those blessings, getting the first aliyah, but circumstances have changed. I'm going to opt out of my kahuna and I'm going to marry this young woman. Sorry, it's not optional to be a Kohen. It's your birthright and it's who you are. It's like being Jewish. There's no option. You can't opt out of being Jewish. Unfortunately, there are people who do that, but it doesn't work because it is who you are. It's your essence. I know it's politically incorrect, but it's like a man and a woman. You can't actually become a woman if you're a man, or vice versa. Political correctness notwithstanding, there are some things that are actually unchangeable. So that's the meaning of the pasuk. Lahazhir beis din ala koyanim. The beis din must tell the koyanim, you must keep this. A kohen who is flagrantly violating these laws, we don't say, it's okay, it's just your kohen laws. No, these are serious laws. You're not keeping them. We're going to punish you. That's what the beis din used to do when they had power. A kohen who would flagrantly go to cemeteries or become tamei to the dead would get lashes. A kohen who married a divorcee would be separated from her by the court. It was something that the court would enforce. Now, based on that interpretation and on that verse, if we look back at the first verse of the parsha, you might say an explanation that differs from Rashi. And you might say, Emor ve'amarta, lahazhir beis din al ha-koyanim, to tell the beis din that they have to make sure the koyanim observe these mitzvahs. Once again, the double language, Emor el ha-koyanim, is what you tell the koyanim. Ve'amarta aleim is what you tell the beis din, the non-koyanim, the Yisraelim. This that I'm telling the koyanim, hey, you guys have to make sure they do it. And if that were the pshat, my friends, if that were the interpretation, then we would know why Moshe told this to the Bnei Yisrael, to the beis din, because Hashem told him to. You see, the way Rashi interprets it, that Emor ve'amarta means the adults should tell the kids, Hashem never told him to tell the beis din about the koyanim. Well, all of a sudden, 24 verses later, he goes ahead and tells the beis din to warn the koyanim. Where did Moshe come up with that? Well, why are you giving messages over that Hashem didn't give you? Hashem told you to tell the koyanim. He told you to tell the koyanim to tell their children. So that's it. It should have said, Vaydaber Moshe el Aaron ve'el Bonav. End. What's this Vel kol b'nei Yisrael? Where does Moshe get this idea that he's supposed to share these mitzvahs with the Jewish people and they're supposed to make sure the kohanim keep it if Hashem didn't tell him to? So therefore, it would make sense to interpret the first verse differently than Rashi, and to say that it actually means Emor ve'amarta, tell the Kohanim and tell the Yisraelim, the Beis Din, that they should make sure the Kohanim keep it. And then when we get to 24 verses later, we'll know why Moshe told them, because Hashem told him to tell them. He didn't just decide on his own. What do you say? Good question. So this is what Rashi is coming to explain. That's why Rashi quotes the words Emor el HaKohanim before he quotes the words Emor ve'amarta. And by the way, he doesn't say Emor LaKohanim ve'amarta. He says first Emor LaKohanim and then Emor ve'amarta. Because what he wants you to know is Emor LaKohanim. What is about to be said in this verse is being said to the Kohanim. It's not being said to the Jewish people, the non-Kohanim. It's only being said to the Kohanim. And therefore, when it says Emor ve'amarta, say and say, the double language, you cannot say it's talking about the Beis Din because they are not Kohanim. That's why Rashi interprets it to mean Emor ela Kohanim, speak to the Kohanim specifically. But Emor ve'amarta, say it to them twice, once that they should observe it, and a second time that they should tell their children to observe it. And now we understand the Divrei HaMaskal, the quote that Rashi gives from the pasuk, because his understanding of Emor ve'amarta is actually based on the words Emor ala Kohanim, speak to the Kohanim. Okay, but now we have another question. Why does Moshe tell the Beis Din about these laws and give them instruction to make sure the Kohanim keep it if Hashem didn't tell him to do so? Now, truth be told, that in the Chumash, when Hashem tells Moshe to tell the Jewish people, it doesn't always say that Moshe did it. And when Moshe says something to the Jewish people, it doesn't always say that Hashem told him to say it. Let's look at the very next section. Chapter 22. Hashem spoke to Moshe saying, and it talks about a person who is tamei, not entering into the holy places, not eating the holy sacrifices. It talks about who is allowed to eat teruma. And that's it. Till the end of the second aliyah, that's it. It doesn't say that that Moshe told the Jewish people. It just said that Hashem spoke to Moshe. Doesn't say that he told them. The next section talks about the blemishes of animals that can be sacrificed or not sacrificed. Doesn't say Moshe told the Jewish people. The next section is about not bringing in mother and baby, not sacrificing them on the same day. Again, doesn't say that Moshe told the Jewish people. The next section is about about holidays. Starts with Shabbos, Pesach, counting of the Omer, Shavuos, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot. At the end, it says, Vaydaber Moshe es Moed Hashem b'nei Yisrael. At the end, it says that Moshe spoke and told these holidays to the Jewish people. But that's the exception. It doesn't usually say that Moshe delivered the message. It's self-understood. And if you fast forward to Parshas Matos, it starts with the words, Vaydaber Moshe al Roshei HaMatos of Bnei Yisrael lemer zeh Hadavar asher tziva Hashem. Moshe spoke to the heads of the tribes of the Jewish people. He said, this is the words that Hashem has spoken. And he goes on to speak about vows and oaths. Nowhere in the Torah does it say that Hashem told that to Moshe. Doesn't say it. But of course, if Moshe told it to the Jewish people, of course Hashem told it to Moshe. He didn't make it up. It's self-understood. So why does it sometimes speak about Hashem telling Moshe, and then it says Moshe told them? Sometimes it just says Hashem told Moshe, and it's self-understood that he told them. Sometimes it just says that he told the Jewish people, and it's self-understood that Hashem told him. We don't know why that is. That's one of the secrets. Maybe some commentaries explain it, but that's not a simple question. However, over here it's different, because over here it says that Hashem told him to say to certain people, and then it goes ahead and says that he told it to other people. It's not like other places where Hashem tells him, and it's understood that he said it, or he said it, and it's understood that Hashem told him. Over here, it says who he was told to say it to, and it says who he told it to, and it's not the same. So what's going on? Okay, my friends, here's the concept. The Gemara in Tractate Shabbos says, Kohanim zrizim heim. Kohanim are vigilant. What is it talking about? It's talking about the Kohanim in the Beis HaMikdash who had a fire. They slept in a room called the Beis HaMoiked. The Beis HaMoiked was a room that had like an ascending platform, and the Kohanim had like beds on those platforms, and they would sleep there during the night. There was no real work to do in the Beis HaMikdash at night except for guard. So other than the guards, the Kohanim would sleep at night and work during the day. Of course, not all Kohanim were there every night because there was a roster, but whatever, it was your turn, you slept there. Now, Jerusalem can get pretty cold, especially at night, especially on a stone floor, especially on the Har HaBayis, which was a mountain, is a mountain.
Especially barefoot.
Barefoot, exactly. Well, they were sleeping at night, but anyway, the point is they had a fire in the middle of the room. Moiked means like a fireplace. They had a fire. Now, obviously, you can't light a fire on Shabbos. Now, in the on the Mizbeach, on the altar, you were allowed to light a fire on Shabbos because the sacrifices overrode Shabbos. But a fire for your comfort did not override Shabbos. So they had this wood arrangement in the middle of the room there. Before Shabbos, they struck a match, or whatever was the equivalent of a match in those days, and they lit it. And then Shabbos came in and everything was fine. Now that is something that is forbidden to do anywhere else in the world. Everywhere else in the world, if you want to light a fire before Shabbos on a wood pile, you have to make sure that the wood pile is mostly caught on fire before Shabbos comes in. And that has to do with a decree that if you don't make sure that it's caught on properly, maybe you will fan the flames on Shabbos. You'll see that it's not catching on properly, and you'll fan the flames on Shabbos, which is obviously a big no-no. So therefore, by rabbinic law, you have to make sure that a majority of the wood in the fire, in the wood pile, is caught on fire. That does not apply to this wood pile in the Beis HaMikdash. And the Gemara says the reason for this is because Kohanim zrizim heim. Kohanim are vigilant. They are very careful. They're not going to make a mistake. They're going to know it's Shabbos, and they're not going to forget and fan the flames. Okay, so there's a question about this. It's going to tie back into what we're talking about. We know that the laws, the rabbinic laws that apply to the Jewish people apply to Kohanim as well. Meaning to say a Kohen who's making a fire in his own fireplace, in his own private home, has to follow the rule that a majority of the wood has to be caught on before Shabbos. It's only when he is involved in kahuna matters like in the Beis Hamikdash, he's serving the Beis Hamikdash, even though he's going to sleep, but it's in the context of serving the Beis Hamikdash. So he's very vigilant because he knows he's serving Hashem, and he has that vigilance about him. He doesn't have to be reminded, that's fine. Even so, there is a question. Does it only apply in the Beis Hamikdash, where he has the presence of the Shekhinah and the holiness of Hashem's presence, and that's what keeps him vigilant? Or is it the very fact that he's a Kohen, and the Kohanim in general were holier people, they were supposed to be at least. They were more learned people that were supposed to be at least, because they didn't have to farm. They were supported by the wider community. And therefore, when it came to their laws, I'm not saying this about laws that apply to Yisraelim equally, but when it came to their laws, because they were vigilant people, they were extra vigilant, and they did not need rabbinic oversight and decrees to encourage them to keep their laws. Those are two possible ways of understanding it. Again, perhaps it only applies in the Beis Hamikdash, and therefore laws that are outside the Beis Hamikdash, we would have to keep an eye on them for, because they're not necessarily vigilant outside of the holy place. Or no, it's a general rule. Kohanim are careful about all the kahunic laws wherever they are. And that's the difference between verse 1 of the Torah portion and verse 24 of the Torah portion. Hashem looks at the Jewish people with a good eye. And Hashem says, the Kohanim, they're vigilant. I don't have to tell the Beis Din to guard over the Kohanim. My Kohanim, they're going to do the right thing. They're going to marry whoever I tell them to marry. They're going to go to whichever funerals I tell them to go to. And everything's going to be great. Moshe Rabbeinu, on the other hand, acting as the first rabbi in history, realized that it's not so simple. You see, the Torah is given to a perfect world, but the rabbis judge by the facts on the ground, and they see that perhaps the world is not perfect, and people perhaps need greater encouragement than they did in the past. And Moshe is saying, the Kohanim, I know they're vigilant, but maybe when they're outside the Beis Hamikdash, and they're not serving Hashem per se in a holy place, maybe they're not as careful, and maybe they need some encouragement. And that's why I'm going to tell the Beis Din to make sure they marry the right women, make sure they go to only the right funerals, and so on and so forth. So that's the difference between what Hashem told Moshe and what Moshe told the Jewish people.
Where do we have anywhere that Torah was handed down through rabbis? I mean, I know later on, but I'm saying at this point now, it was really only the Leviim, and I guess the Kohanim to some extent. The Leviim had a lot less work to do. That were teaching, right? All the Arei Leviim were, so that's why you learned over there, and you had a lot of extra Rebbeim, because every Ritzeach brought his own Rebbe, but you don't have anywhere any mention of the Beis Medrash as an institution in Yiddishkeit until when?
I don't know the answer to that question, but the idea that the rabbis have the power to enact decrees goes back to the very beginning, because we see that Moshe Rabbeinu already enacted decrees. There are several decrees that are made by Moshe Rabbeinu. One of them, for example, is to read the Torah every 3 days. That was enacted by Moshe. Another one is to read the readings about the Yom Tov on each Yom Tov. To read about Pesach on Pesach, Shavuos on Shavuos, Sukkot, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur.
Hakel Oh, no, they didn't do Hakel because they didn't have it.
Hakel,
They
yeah,
weren't
they
in
needed a
Eretz
king for
Yisrael
that.
yet.
Exactly, they needed a king for that. And Shemitah and the year after Shemitah, all that. So that didn't start till later. But the point is that that idea already started before. Moshe Rabbeinu already started enacting, rules to safeguard the Torah and so on. So this is going in line with that. A base medrash, that I don't know. That's a historical question. I'm sure
Right.
we can answer that question. Okay, so now we have to get a little bit of inspiration. We always try to bring down the things that we learn into some practical application for us today in South Florida or wherever you are. Where's Rabbi Smith's father? He usually tunes in. Okay. Here we go. The Kohen represents, or the Kohen was a godly man. And the Rambam says that you don't have to be a Kohen to be a Kohen. Any person who commits himself to serving Hashem in a devoted way can be sanctified like a Kohen. Of course, he can't serve like a Kohen in the Beis HaMikdash, but he can be sanctified like a Kohen. And therefore, the idea of a Kohen represents the godliness within each and every one of us. And the idea that a Kohen is always careful about his kahuna, meaning to say his godliness, no matter what, no matter where. But then maybe there are Kohanim who are not so careful. This is reflected in our neshamas. The innermost aspect of our neshama is one that can never be tainted and can never be exiled, can never be affected by anything we do. It always remains in its full strength. However, sometimes it's activated and you feel it and you live with it. And sometimes it's dormant and it's just remaining in its place and it's not sending you messages. The Rebbe spoke once about the unfortunate plague of intermarriage that we have here in America and many, many other countries. And the Rebbe said that, you might have people who do not bring up their children as observant, perhaps they're not observant themselves, but they feel very strongly about being Jewish. And when do they wake up? When their child brings back a shiksa or a shegitz. All of a sudden they wake up. What do you mean? You can't do that. You have to marry Jewish. And the kids are like, I don't know what you're talking about. You never really spoke about being Jewish and it didn't seem very important to you. So what's going on here? Why is it so important if they didn't behave like it was so important? The answer is that when it came to other mitzvahs, they just kind of didn't pay attention because they felt like, I'm Jewish, whether or not I do this, that, or the other, I'm Jewish. My kids are Jewish. But when it comes to something that affects the very essence of their Jewishness, if their kids marry out, their grandkids are not Jewish, or perhaps they're Jewish technically, but will be brought up as not Jewish. So something like that affects the very essence of their soul. And all of a sudden it wakes up and comes out in full strength. And what we have to do is activate that aspect of the neshama. Don't wait until something affects it and pricks it, and all of a sudden we wake up and say, hey, we got to do something about it. No, realize that your Jewishness has to be expressed in little things, not just in big things. Your devotion to Hashem has to be expressed every time you say a bracha, every time you get up in the morning and you say Moida Ani, every time you daven, every time you do a mitzvah, every time you do a favor to help another Jew, every Shabbos, every Yontif, all of these are expressions of your Jewishness. All of them strengthen your connection to Hashem and reveal that essential connection. And that's really what we have to do in this world, to make sure that our devotion to Hashem does not remain cloistered in a closet in the very dark dark, deep recesses of our soul, but rather that we fan that flame and we make it shine and reach our entire lifestyle and also those that are around us. Like we started the shir lahazhir gedolim alaktanim, to bring about the shine. The adults should be shining, they should shine onto their children, and they should also fan the flames of their children and reveal the godliness that's innately within them. Okay, that's my
There's
rant. That's
there's
my
no
Hasidic rant.
discussion anywhere of the Shinantam Levanecha, that we have this, that every Jew has a mitzvah to push and prod and Pesach, or we have a Seder for what? To poke children,
Absolutely, it's not just the Kohanim.
right?
There are other verses that we also learn about teaching the children, and the Gemara quotes several of them, and from all of them together, we understand that it is a general law that applies to all the mitzvahs. Why does it express it by Kohanim, and why by other things yes, and by some things not? That's for another shir, maybe next year. But it does apply to everything, yes.
Oh
Okay,
yeah,
friends,
thank you, Rebbe.
make sure to give me a number 10 when they send out a satisfaction rating.
No, you get a 5. What is it? 5 stars?
Oh, okay, five.
You
Five
get
is
a
good. As long as
6.
it's
You
five
get
out
a
of five.
6 out of 5.
Excellent. Shkoyach.
Thank
Have
you,
a good
Rabbi.
night, everybody.
You,
My pleasure.
Rabbi.
Thank you.